How's everyone doing? It's Grant with the Garden of Eater. In this video, we'll talk about culls, what we cull for, how we cull, and then what we do with our cull, as well as this will kind of be an update on this rack. We'll start off with one of the very first reasons why you might want to cull something. Let's say you had a hitchhiker, like in this tank, we moved this Java fern from another tank into our Green Tiger project tank. And the hitchhikers happen to be some Galaxy Pintos, and I think maybe a steel, either red or blue steel. So we moved those out of the tank, and now it's just the Green Tigers. Lots of culls and work to do, but still the right genetics. So we got the Galaxy Pintos out before they were able to taint the genes and mess up the project. And this tank stayed the same. If there was anything to cull, we moved it out of there as well. And then these guys are the other culls from this tank right here. This tank did have a ton of the Green Tiger culls, like this guy right here running around in it. And I wasn't sure if they were pure or not, so I moved those to a different tank. And then everything in this tank is trying to go for my own Tiger Galaxy. So lots of tiger stripes in here. And anything else that didn't have tiger stripes or was just the Pinto, spot head Pinto like this one running around, that one will need to be culled in the next cull sweep, I'll call it. But you don't get them all. There's a lot of moss in this tank, so what we do is we feed like we do now, but you can see these shrimp taking the food to the back of the tank, and we try to drop the food always in the front, but they'll move it. That's why we don't use feeding trays. They'll just take the food right off the tray anyways and eat where they want to eat. So nice male, hoping that one carries on its genes. But all the other shrimp, we moved the Green Tigers into here. Couple nice ones in there, but lots of orange. And these tanks are the same. I haven't touched the cheetahs. There's nothing ever to cull in these guys. They breed pretty damn true for the most part. Haven't really touched these as well. What I could do for these is cull the ones in the white, separate the whites from the reds. You can go for the Hino open entry patterns for these, or you can go the reverse route and go for the extreme or one stripes. The extremes are probably more favored for the most part. And then in here you could cull for two different ways. For some people, they might say the whites are more favorable. It's a lot less common. So many people thought the blues were such sought out for and more money for such a long period of time that everybody's colonies now all throw more blue than white, and a lot of the white will end up turning blue as they age anyways. So you could always try and separate these white ones off into their own colony to get that original panda pattern back. And then it's been quite cold in Florida, so we've been using this tank a lot to sell out of, so it's looking kind of skimpy. But of course, anything that came up in this tank that was looking really pattern or not dark blue, we could cull that. And then up here, I've worked on this tank a little bit, I think, since the last video. But for the most part, I want to make sure the white is more vibrant, like that one walking right here. And then try and select for the ones with the most dots and the nicest capes. That one's really nice. Same with that one. But these shrimp, they're always so hungry, they took all the food into the back. I'd never really have any culls out of these guys. Maybe 1 in 1,000 comes kind of tigerish looking, like the orange eye blue tiger, where it's not solid, but for the most part, almost all of them, 99%, will come out with this thick, solid shell with no stripes. Then here, we almost got all of them. You can see one or two of these guys running around. We have moved these into the hallway. Oh, there's more. There's like 3 or 4, 5, 6. Oh, they're coming out of the woodworks now. But we've moved those guys into their own tank, so there's not as many. This is still just an orange-eyed project tank. No real goal of this. I'm kind of using this to pull shrimp from this tank to start off other projects. The main projects are with this hollow eye. With some of these guys with the stripes and the yellow bodies, I could select and try to make some nice orange-eyed yellow tigers. And in this tank we did a lot of work. You notice we trimmed the moss back. With how overgrown it was, we couldn't really work on these tanks the way we wanted to. I culled a lot. For this tank we're going for this back line. So any of the shrimp that didn't have the back line, we culled for the most part. This one right here doesn't have a back line, so we would need to remove this one as well as the red one right there. But we wait until they're about 1 centimeter in size to cull these, because as they age to adulthood, the back line becomes more prominent and will show through. Even some of the ones that we culled can grow a back line later on in life, but we cull the ones that don't show the back line early on, because those ones will tend not to have the full complete back line that we want to pass down to the next generation. So all of these culls went up into this tank right here. And you can see that one right there kind of has the back line, but it's not all the way down the back, just on the head. So we've culled these. And then this tank, these are culls from the hallway, the Red Galaxy tank. So we've got some blacks and some tie bees and other pintos that didn't make the Galaxy cut. Still some nice shrimp. And then from that same tank, we've culled the steels into their own tank. So we've just added a few more to this tank. There wasn't quite as many in here before. And then the other culls from this tank, where we didn't take the green tigers, we just took the spot head pintos and the ones that didn't have as many stripes, and we moved them up here. Now, we don't really kill or feed off our culls. We kind of move them into other tanks. A lot of times when we cull, they still have the genes that we need to pass on for new projects to be created, so we can save them, hold them back in case something happens with the main colony. It's always good to have a backup tank. However, it's a great way for newbies and beginners to get started. If they want to get a chance or a crack at having some of the fancier shrimp, you can start with culls, and if you're doing everything right, you can get some of the more expensive shrimp without having to pay top dollar. Another reason why we could cull, and I don't really get it that much, with this guy, you can see where the shell comes all the way down and covers up its gills. If it kind of looked like it had a short chin and you can see the white gills right underneath the shell, you would want to cull that. We call it short skirt. Some people will say that it'll go away with molts. I haven't really seen that too often. I've only had a few though, so maybe it's more common when you have a bunch of them, but I've only really had 2 or 3 pop up in some of my colonies. I've gotten it quite a bit on imported shrimp when you purchase them, but you don't really see it too much when you're breeding your own shrimp. If you get it from good lines, it is. I think it's kind of genetic, or maybe it's from poor water quality, and that's why it disappears on the other breeders when they molt. And with these guys, I'm going to let these guys grow up a little bit. Any of them that are looking awfully yellow or awfully orange, I'll cull them and just try and select the ones that stay the greenest the longest. Kind of the same with these guys, but these are kind of backups for my other orange-eyed project tanks. I don't have a lot of orange eyes, but it would be easy for me to take one of my males here shortly and throw it into the mix and cull the rest of the males into the Tang Tai tank, but a couple buried in here. And I like the backlines. I think I'm going to try and make these into a nice backline tank. But lots of orange in this tank. And then this tank, we haven't trimmed this one yet. It's not really going to be culled. It's just a mixed Caridina tank. There's all sorts of different kinds of pintos and steels in here, and a couple other tigers as well. And I didn't sell any of this moss. It's got this algae in it. Same exact care as the other tanks. However, this tank just grew a little algae on top. So until that algae goes away, I'm not going to trim it and sell it. I'll probably just trim the top off and throw it out in the koi pond for the koi to eat. And then you can see this is where all the other moss that we sold came from. We really cleared it out. We've got our pintos with some stardust going in there. Almost looks like these stardust crossed, but I don't believe it. I think they're just gonna look like normal stardust when they grow up. And then we've got our green tiger project tanks. Lots of the orange eyes growing up. I'm going to separate these guys into their own tank once we set up the new rack. And then I need to cull some of these into the other tank that I just showed off down at the end for sure. But some of these holding a little bit nicer green. It's kind of hard to see on film. This one right here. Looking blue on film, but to the eye they're more green. That's the orange eyes to select and work on their own project. And then we've just got the blue steels in here. So the only other thing I'd talk about is with these orange eye and the hollow eye. Every time I seem to cross them, we get the normal eye. However, on F2s, we've gotten, where we cross these normal eyes back together, we've gotten the orange eyes. And I need to trim up that tank and start reselective breeding them. And I think I'm going to crossbreed and get this one out. So this might be the last time you guys see her in this tank. I'm probably going to crossbreed her back and see if I can't get some hollow eyes and different patterns going. So I think I'm going to call that a video. If you got any questions on culling, feel free to ask. I'm always down to talk about genetics. I really hope that these guys take off. Some really cool patterns in here. I mean, there's tons of babies in here, but I want the right babies, the right patterns to start coming out. I'd like that one to move on. So, thanks for watching, guys. Have a happy holiday. Subscribe for more content.